What's up, Summoners? King Blair here. Today, for Epic 7 Worth It, we're going to be talking about which unit should you be pulling between Rimuru and Millim, and then we'll go in depth into Millim since we did miss last week's Worth It because I was extremely busy. So we're going to do it today before the Rimuru banner goes away, and both these heroes are going to be limited. So what we'll do is first talk about which one you should pick. We're going to get right to the point, and then right after that, we will go more in depth in Millim since I have not talked about Millim in depth yet, and I have talked about Rimuru last week, and we already know he's an extremely good unit, right? So with that, if you do like the video, make sure you like, subscribe, and your Discord server, link that in the description. Without further ado, let's get right into it, starting with the summary of the video, what the units do, as well as just getting to the point, which one should you pull, right? I don't want to say it, make you guys wait. So with that, which one should you pull? They are both limited, so ideally you do pull for both because you're not going to see them again for potentially a year or more, right? And usually a year, right? We know that most of the collabs do get rerun every year, but that's a very long time, right? To wait for a collab rerun. So with that in mind, which of these two should you pull? Well, I'm going to recommend you pull for Rimuru. Why? I think he has more versatility than Millim in what he can actually do. I think he's going to be a very, very relevant unit for a long time. Why do I say that? Well, he has a lot of utility in his kit with being able to copy buffs, and that's just something that's going to be good in the game for a very long time, right? As more units are introduced that have more buffs, he's going to be able to counter those type of units. He also does have the damage to back up his kit because he's able to one-shot units like they're nothing, as well as fitting into a variety of team compositions, both bruisers as well as aggro, as well as even tank drafts, right? He fits into almost every single draft out there because he does so much damage, because he has so much utility. He's just an extremely versatile unit. And I highly recommend you go for Rimuru if you can only pull for one. Now, if you can pull for both, I would actually pull for both. On the other hand, Millim is also a decent unit. She's not a bad unit. You may see people are saying, oh, she sucks, I don't like her. Well, in RTA, she is very hard to draft, and she does have some pretty high gear requirements, right, for RTA. Now, the only thing, though, is that a lot of people don't talk about things like Arena and Guild Wars. In these situations, she's actually really solid. Why is that? Well, in Arena and Guild Wars, you can actually predict what is going to happen with the AI, and you can actually set her up for success since her biggest weakness is that she does not start with the evasion like Violet does, right? The other thing is for RTA, she's still a very good late pick unit in a draft, and she functions more as a counter pick type unit. She may not be as general use as Rimuru, but she's still a very good unit to have. But again, just know that you will need very good stat requirements. She does have two different builds with speed and with the Bruiser build, but again, both do require pretty good gear, right, to make her actually work properly, with the counter gear actually requiring her artifact to work the best. So now that we kind of talked about Millim and Rimuru and how you should be pulling for Rimuru if you can only pull for one, let's actually take a deeper look into Millim since we haven't talked about her kit before. Actually talk about what she does, where she shines, what she can do, and why she requires such good gear, and why she may be good for Guild Wars and Arena and the things of that nature. So Rimuru, we did talk about him 2 weeks ago when he was released, and he has proven to be an extremely good meta unit. Honestly, just good everywhere. He even has some potential in PvE, although I can't think of it on the top of my head, just because of the fact he can actually copy buffs, right? I can imagine in hard rate, you can actually copy the boss's defense and greater attack buff, which can be pretty funny, right? That can actually be pretty unique, to say the least. So let's actually look at Millim since we have not talked about her before, what she can actually do, what her kit does, how I would build her, right? I haven't built her quite yet, but I did already pull for her, right? So let's actually show Millim and what she can do. So first, starting with the fact that she's a mage, and as mages, you guys know, she has access to some really good artifacts, right? Mages have access to some of the best artifacts, and I will show the artifact, her own artifact, why it's so good for her. But as far as stat line, she has very standard mage stat lines. Really good attack, like one of the highest attack in the game, actually. Like that attack is on the higher end as far as attack goes. The health is, again, like a mage, low health, really good defense, very standard of any type of mage. And she does have some help with crit rate, right? So pretty solid stat line, right, for a DPS type unit, right? And that's, for the most part, even if you build a bruiser or in a aggro type draft, that is going to help a lot. As far as her awakening, it is going to be attack. It is not crit rate, but attack is still a pretty nice thing to have, right? It does give you a lot of stats, and it is very nice to have, and it does synergize very well with what she's trying to do. Because at the end of the day, Millim is trying to do damage, right? Whether you build a bruiser or you build her as a speedy DPS unit, she's trying to do damage. So stat line, nothing crazy, nothing too bad. She's a mage, so she does have his access to book and all that good stuff. So as far as animations go, I still love this. You guys know I love the anime. Millim is amazing. I'm gonna build her just because I love the anime, and Millim is actually one of my favorite characters. I think she's super funny. But with that, let's actually talk about each of the skills. With this one being quite basic, it's going to be a skill that gives her increased attack, which is nice for one turn, as well as recovering your health proportions to damage dealt. Now this is going to be 20%, which I believe is equivalent to a lifesteal set. So her S1 essentially has a built-in lifesteal set. This is nice because if you counterattack or if you're attacking with S1s, you are getting a little bit of healing. That is very, very nice to actually be able to have. And you also are able to set up your own attack buff. And you've seen that focus bar go up, and you also see that dragon passive, which we'll talk about in a second. The other thing to note is that her S1 with Soulburn does give her an extra turn. Why is this important? She is a mage. Mages can get access to their own books, which means that she can self-attack buff and then do the S3. Again, that's really nice because it makes her self-sufficient because she is of the mage class. If you do decide to make her SPD DPS, she does have access to that Soulburn, extra turn, get attack buff, go into an S3. The S2, on the other hand, is going to be her passive, and as well as an extra skill that you will be able to see when we get to max focus. But essentially what this skill does is at the end of your turn and at the start of the battle, it does go up to 100% if you Malagor it, you get a special passive, which is Dragon's Eye. Dragon's Eye increases your hit chance and your evasion by 20%. Hit chance is going to hit things like Violet more often, right? You have a 20% higher chance to hit Violet. So instead of having a 55% chance to hit Violet, you have a 35%, instead of having a 55% chance to miss, you have a 35% chance to hit, which means you have a 75% chance to hit versus a 45% chance, or 65 over 45. I can't do math right now, y'all. My brain is scrambled right now. Basically, you get an extra 20% hit chance against Violet. So instead of only having a 45% chance to hit Violet, you have a 65%. There we go. That was a mouthful. I'm terrible at math right now. But yes, it does help you actually hit Violet. It also will help you hit things like Arby with Moonlight Dreamblade, right? So Moonlight Dreamblade, not a problem with 4 Millim because you do have this Dragon's Eye passive. The other part, which is pretty relevant because Landy used to be one of the biggest stealth units that we had in the game, the game is going to be that she dispels stealth from all enemies, and this ignores Aphras. This primarily hits things like Akali that get their own stealth, Kise that can get her own stealth, and it also hits Landy with Guiding Light, which was a pretty big deal because Guiding Light was a pretty good artifact. So you can actually reveal Landy before she takes her turn. That is really nice. One common misconception is that this hits Stene. Stene is a passive. It's not a stealth buff, so you cannot hit Stene with Millim. I know people are like, man, not a Stene counter. They're very sad about that. But no, she is only going to happen with things like Kise, Akali, and Landy on Guiding Light, which is really nice against Landy because it does make her a pretty decent Landy counter, and it kind of is pushing Landy out of that Guiding Light build, right? Just because she's so good at actually revealing her. So that part is the first part of the passive. The other part is going to be the focus. When you get the max one, you will activate Dragon Buster, which is a pretty nice AoE attack that attacks all enemies and removes 10 souls. This, again, it's considered as an extra skill, which means it will not trigger counterattacks. So if you're wondering, will this trigger a million Elris swords? Would those trigger Rem? No, it won't trigger those units. It will trigger Rimuru, though, and it can trigger Mercedes' Magic for Friends. But because it's an extra attack, an extra skill, same thing with Belion's extra S1 skill, it's not going to trigger counterattacks, right? Which is pretty nice, right? And it also does remove souls, which, again, pretty cool, right? Not sure in how many situations you would actually need that, but yeah, you're able to remove souls from that. So now we get to the S3 that will kind of put her whole kit together, but essentially you get a single target damage skill that applies Extinction. The other thing is that you get increased evasion for 3 turns, which is actually a pretty long time, and she does have this cooldown for 4 turns, so there's only 1 turn, aside from the beginning of the fight, where you do not have evasion buff up. With her passive, she has a functional 70% evasion, right? So pretty much exactly like Rylet without Moonlight Dreamblade, essentially, because you already get this on a passive. So again, 70% passive, you have the same chance of hitting her as you do a Rylet with evasion buff and Moonlight Dreamblade. So nothing, pretty nice, right? The other part is that you also do ignore, I believe you also do ignore sharing effects. Yes, you do ignore damage sharing effects, which does mean that you ignore Auras. That's pretty stacked. So if you want to think of how Millim will work, for a speedy DPS unit, you're essentially going to be opening the fight. You're going to Soulburn. You're going to poke down the enemy a little bit with your S1. You're going to get that attack buff, and then you're going to come in with an S3 and try to execute the target and apply that Extinction, right? So you just yell at them, and then eventually you'll get that extra skill. You'll do that extra damage. You'll do that AoE. Kind of cool. Steal the souls. Do some good damage, right? So essentially, that's her S3, right? In a speedy DPS type Tinko position, right? Where she opens with S1 Soulburn, gets the attack buff, gets the S3, and kills a priority squishy, right? This can kill something like a Landy. It can kill it can potentially hit a Violet and kill them, but that is very risky if you are trying to kill Violet this way. But again, it is nice in things like Make Chloe, but primarily really good for killing some squishies. Really good for killing Arby as well, because you're able to poke with the S1 and then execute with the S3, right? And then get the evasion, so you're able to stick around the board for a little bit longer to try to get at least one S2. On the other hand, her Bruiser build is trying to essentially make use of the fact that she has Slice Steal and the fact that she has evasion and kind of work like a Rylet. If you fought against Bruiser Rylets, the lifesteal Rylets, their whole goal is essentially do very high single target damage and try to stick around the board for as long as possible and just continuous damage and try to survive off the evasion and off the healing. Same idea as a Rylet and functionally kind of similar, except you get the extra damage from this S2, whereas Rylet gets that extra skill with his focus, right? So kind of very, very similar to Rylet. The only difference, and this is a very important difference to actually know about Millim, is the fact that you don't open with evasion buff. And that is a very big deal, and it's one of the things that's actually holding her back from being like a really good unit. The fact that you don't open with evasion for the Bruiser and for the speedy DPS build does leave you susceptible to a lot of targets killing you before you're able to set up. This used to be old Violet's problem, right? Old Violet used to not have innate evasion. He used to just have to rely on Moonlight Dreamblade. And a lot of times you get one-shotted at the beginning before you set up your evasion buff and you die. The other thing is that if they have things like Angel of Light Angelica, you are going to be missing these buffs because she can not only strip them, but the unbuffable will make it so you cannot get this Dragon's Eye passive, right? If you have unbuffable on you, at the start of the turn, your timer on that buff will go away, and if you have unbuffable, you're not getting the buff again, right? So she loses to unbuffable. The other thing is that for the speedy DPS build, she relies on the extra turn to actually execute the target. The S3 damage is not that good, and that's something you have to know. The S3 damage is not that crazy, right? It does do a lot, right? It extincts, it ignores damage sharing effects, but it does not have any speed scaling like top model Luluka. So you do need that soul burn, and that soul reliance does introduce more counters. So again, she does have quite a few counters that are relevant in the meta. The biggest one being Beeline, because in the speedy build, you need to have this attack buff that you have to use your souls for S1 or you're not killing anything. On the other hand, for the slower Millim, there's a lot more things that can actually kill you. If you get one shot, if you get set up with unbuffable, right? If they provoke you, right? Or if they just strip your evasion buff, then you're not doing anything, right? Same problems that Violet has. Or Violet, not Violet. Violet has no problems. So again, she does have a lot of counters, but also does have a lot of potential, which is why in a place like RTA, she's only seeing play as a counter pick unit. She's really good into Landy as a late pick because it kind of forces Landy to not be on Guiding Light. And if she's on Guiding Light, she's just getting deleted. She is a really good option for aggro teams that want to have ways to deal with different units, right? That you want to try to one-shot things. It gives you access to Extinction, and it gives you a pseudo Bruiser just because of the evasion. On the other hand, the Bruiser build is going to be better for teams that can actually keep her alive until she S3s, right? You have to keep her alive until she reaches her S3 in a Bruiser team, or she's not going to do anything. She's going to die right out the gate, right? So you do need to keep her alive, and you also do need her artifact because the artifact also gives her the potential to counterattack when she evades, which again is really, really nice, and it lets you you can also do counter set with her artifact for higher chances to counter, right? So that's how I build her. As far as how I would use her for Guild Wars, it's really good into Violet. It's really good into Landy. It's really good in Guild Wars, period, for any type of team that has revives, right? She functions really well like a Tomoka. And because Guild Wars and Arena are a controlled environment, you can actually guarantee yourself the souls if there's no Lion. And you can also know what they're going to be attacking, and you know that you can actually get her to return too, right? So in some places like Arena and Guild Wars, where things are, you know what's going to happen, she can be very good. In RTA, you basically want to take her into Violet because Violet cannot hear her. You want to take her into heavy Earth teams because Earth heroes will not be able to hit her once she sets up S3, which again is very, very nice because she'll be able to heal off of this S1. And you can actually hit Violet more reliably, again, as well as killing Landy since you're able to remove that stealth from those Landys. Really, really good Landy counter, solid Violet counter, solid DPS, right? But again, does have a lot of counters that are meta, Lion being a big one, Angel of Light Angelica being a big one, and in the future, there's going to be more units that counter her, right? So again, as far as the artifact, this artifact is extremely niche. It legit is only for her, and it's only for her Bruiser build, right? Because it just gives you a chance to counterattack whenever you This artifact legit just lets you counterattack whenever you evade, right? No other mage really evades, so it's going to be only used for Millim, since she's the only hero that can really evade, and it only gives you a chance to counterattack. It's really good for Bruiser, but not for the speed one, because again, as mentioned, you have a high reliance on the souls. So to summarize this video, between the two, Rimuru has a lot more uses. He's a lot easier to build, right? He has a lot more utility, and it's going to be a long-term better unit. Millim, on the other hand, can be a very good DPS hero. I don't want to short sell her. She can definitely be a good counter unit. We don't know what other Earth heroes we're going to be getting in the future, so she might get more value when more Earth heroes are released, more stealth heroes are released. She might get more value in the future, so definitely try to pull for her if you have the resources. You want to get both if possible. But overall, Millim does have two builds. Can be pretty spicy with the counter build with the artifact. And can be a fun little hero and a really good Guild Wars and Arena unit. But again, it is completely going to be up to you. But that is all I got for you guys today. I hope y'all enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time. Peace.